Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the
This thing.
Switch Yourself podcast, part of the Finish First Media Network. My name is Austin, co-host number 1. Joined tonight with co-host number 2,
Brandon Alessio.
We'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Week 1 of the NFL, always an exciting time for everyone. I was very excited for this week. There are games happening right now, which I'm very disappointed that we are missing. The hat, this is an ode to Cam Newton, and my hair looks terrible. So, hair looked terrible first. This was an excuse to wear it. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
Brandon, how's your day been today?
Well, we're not feeling the best, so it was all right. I had to read a lot of Shakespeare for one of my classes, which is awful. So that wasn't fun. I haven't finished that yet, so got to get that done after this.
How is it?
It's not very good. Sorry. It's
my.
not very good. It beats the first one we had to read, which was The Taming of the Shrew. But that being said, the bar was set so low where literally Shakespeare recording his bathroom breaks would be better than that.
And that cannot be said about many, but
No.
that's okay.
How about you? How's the day been going?
It's been pretty fine. Nothing crazy. I would like to pose our traditional, very quick question at the beginning of the podcast for Brandon. We're just going to keep it simple today. What brand of phone would you be least likely to purchase?
I don't know.
There's a timer on this. We got to be quick.
Let's say Windows.
All right. I owned a Windows phone in the past, and I very much enjoyed the OS.
That commercial where they're spinning it around. It's like that folding one that's like a Nintendo DS. That looks really stupid.
Rest in power, Nintendo DS.
Rest in peace. I agree, but I don't like that
The
phone.
entire model line has been discontinued.
Very sad.
It is
the
very
3DS was underrated too.
It is. I have never played it, but I really enjoy it. So, if that makes any sense.
It doesn't, but that's all right.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. On this episode for Week 1, we're going to start with injury updates. Not so much updates in terms of prognosis, just more so telling you what's going on. I'm not a doctor. Google injuries, but I'm a real doctor. They're going to help, not me. Next, after that, we're going to go into the recap of Week 1, followed by the waiver ads of Week 1. So
there are quite a few of them.
There are. Actually, a lot of good options and a lot of... It always seems like there's a lot of players that you tell yourself you need to draft before the draft, and then during the draft you don't, and they're on the free agent wire the whole time, and you're like,
That was me with Dallas Goddard. I had to drop him. I dropped him this week, and then he went off for 21 or whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, now I got to waste half my fab to get him if I want him.
He was also a guy that I had ranked high that I just didn't end up getting, and I was just like, I don't feel like dropping anybody for him.
In fairness, I dropped him to pick up Malcolm Brown. So I don't feel like
that works.
I don't feel like as big of an idiot,
depending on your running back depth. But that's not so bad. But
no, it's excusable. Excuse me.
And just for the record, Brandon does not have C19 symptoms.
No,
by the way, this is not a mask situation for the household here.
No.
We're going to go ahead and start with the injuries. I have them noted down here, so I'm just going to go through them very quickly. These are not memorized, so my eyes may not be focused on the camera at all times. No teleprompter here. So first, maybe the biggest injury we had, Marlon Mack is going to be out for the season with a torn Achilles. Clearly not good. Obviously, anybody who got Jonathan Taylor is excited about this. But essentially, that's all we got for the first one there. The next one, we have Dallas tight end Blake Jarwin, who was out for the season with a torn ACL. He was looking, as a lot of people had him as kind of a breakout star this year, so that kind of shut that down immediately. This isn't an out for the season, but we had Michael Thomas, who has a high ankle sprain. Obviously, anybody who's dealt with a player with this in the past knows this is not good. He's listed as probable, but this is one of those things he might miss a week or two, or if he's out there, it might be a decoy situation.
Not only that, if he misses a week or two, his full season probably won't be the same.
Yeah, it is one of those, as Brandon discussed, if you're definitely limited even if you do play. And so there's nothing worse than the decoy situation, as many A.J. Green owners may remember from the past. Next, we had George Kittle. He was still walking around. He's listed as questionable with a knee for next week. I would expect him to play. Le'Veon Bell is also questionable with a hamstring.
I heard he might be out for a couple weeks. I just read that.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. I would, if you just read that, I would probably
It makes no difference.
lean that way.
I mean,
but for the Jets, probably not so much.
Or
Sam
for
Darnold, once again, it's so hard to tell if Sam Darnold's good or not
I don't
because of
think
how
he is.
terrible the situation is.
he threw a really bad pick at the end.
I'm not
pick.
trying to play defense for him. I just think that his situation is so poor that it makes it extremely difficult to tell.
We'll get into that in a minute, but yeah.
Devontae Parker for the Dolphins listed as questionable with a hamstring as well. And I believe those were the big.
I mean, there's still the Mike Evans. He's still nursing back when Miles Sanders is still hurt with his, and we don't know if he's coming back.
Yeah, that's
the new additions.
These were more so new additions to the wire. Miles Sanders, I believe, is expected to play. Mike Evans obviously played through his injury, so there are still a couple injuries that were existing. I don't remember if Cortland Sutton was playing tonight. I believe he was listed more towards doubtful, but he's another guy to watch for next week too.
Seems like everybody with the hamstring too.
Yeah, usually that's stuff that If I remember right, reading from the past, that's what a lot of players,
who aren't ready to play at
they
this
get
level.
hurt.
Yeah,
that's something that gets hurt relatively easily and quickly. It's just because of you go from nothing to 100, 0 to 100. So I believe that's probably most of the big reasons for those. But that's just going to be something to watch. A lot of injuries, and as we'll talk about in the waiver wire, that's something that will play a part for this week's ads. So let's go. Well, and I guess or drops. Let's go ahead and start with the week one, kind of the recap of what went on. We will start with the Washington football team versus the Eagles.
Arguably start with the worst game of the season.
An incredible game.
Yeah.
So,
history
Brandon,
was
if
made.
you give us your notes from that game, and then I'll chime in shortly here.
The key takeaway I took from the Eagles, so that offensive line is brutal. Like they're not good. And I believe there was 8 or 9 sacks on Carson Wentz, but he avoided quite a few of them.
It was 8
with a bunch of highlight reel evasions. And with that, he was rushed a lot, which led him to throw a couple picks. The run game couldn't get cemented because their leading rusher was Boston Scott. The one one high note for people to notice is Dallas Goddard. People might say, oh, well, he had that 34-yard touchdown. Without that, he still would have that's where he got most of his points, which is true. But at the same time, he still would have had 7 catches for 70 yards, which is still 10.5 points. Not only that, but he led the league the team in targets, and he out-targeted Zach Ertz by 2 and had 80 more yards than him. So that's very, very, very encouraging for Goddard owners. When it comes to the Washington football team, first off, history was made. But second off, the pass game is not very good. The run game isn't very good.
Well, in fairness, I would say that they are, as far as a roster goes, one of the more barren, skill guys. They're very barren of skill position guys.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I guess the Eagles didn't have much regarding yards either, but they had 230 yards, and it looks like the Eagles only had around 320, but that's still 100 more yards, and they still scored 10 less points.
Mm-hmm.
But the running game was abysmal there, which has me kind of optimistic for guys like Antonio Gibson, because Peyton Barber, because Peyton Barber, for the 4th year in a row, just shows up and gets 15 plus carries and does nothing with them. 17 carries, 29 yards, which is god awful. And he, of course, got in the end zone twice. But that being said, shows that there is an opportunity for a guy who actually has skill. And compared to Peyton Barber, Antonio Gibson has skill. So I feel like as time goes on, Gibson will get the role and he'll have a decent opportunity. That being said, I was a little disappointed with Terry McLaurin. But when there's only 170 passing yards, you can't really be too upset. But I don't know. I don't have much faith in either team, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think one of the things that was kind of overlooked was with the Eagles and the Washington football team was that according to PFF, they have Washington has the third best or the third ranked D line, and the Eagles were missing Lane Johnson, Andre Dillard, and Brandon Brooks, who are starters on that line,
and it showed.
And that, not that they're usually that good with them, but it just really shone through in a bad way with them gone. So that was a huge deal. Like Brandon said, there were 8 sacks given up, and that's just not a good way to get anything going.
Should have been probably 12.
Carson Wentz really needs to figure out how to dump off the ball. For as much crap as Aaron Rodgers takes for getting rid of it too quickly and too much, Carson Wentz should take a page out of that playbook. I get worried for his long-term health, especially, even seasonal health, given his frequency to injury, and getting hit that many times is obviously not good, so I'd be a little nervous with that. It was good, in terms of bright spots. Rieger led all receivers and routes with 30 on that team. So, he was kind of a little bit of a bright spot, if you want to call it that. Dallas Goddard led the team with receptions. He had 8 on 9 targets, which is obviously what you're looking for. Zach Ertz had 7 targets, but was only able to get 3 receptions. So, there's a lot of talk about Ertz potentially not getting the contract extension and Goddard being the future. So it's, as somebody who owns Ertz in a dynasty league, I'm hoping this trend does not continue, but it is a little bit worrisome nonetheless. And as we're talking about later, Dallas Goddard is going to be potentially a big addition.
Mm-hmm.
And then, again, there just wasn't a whole lot going on as far as any kind of pass game in this. I would be a little nervous about Antonio Gibson. I would not start him again until we had any reason to, just as a side note there. But it appears that Logan Thomas led the team in targets, so that's never a great thing either.
No.
On that side. He had 8 with 4 receptions, so definitely nothing to write home about for either team. If I was a fan of either team, I would not be overly excited either. I thought both teams played pretty poorly. Yeah,
and people might infer, all the people who are like, oh, well, Peyton Barber had 2 touchdowns. He ended with 15 points. Dude sucks. Don't play him.
Well, we'll see.
No, it's a fact.
The next game that I have written down here is the Bills versus the Jets.
Great game.
Are you ready to talk about that one, Brandon?
Yeah, hell of a game. I guess, starting out on that, Josh Allen looked very, very good, in the sense where, everyone's always questioning his passing ability, which is fine because in the past he has shown that it is questionable at best. But he ended with 312 yards, which I don't believe that's his career high, but it's pretty close to it. Also had 2 touchdowns. The one nice thing that he had was he didn't have any interceptions. The one issue, the only problem I had with him was the 2 fumbles he had. But I'd rather have a quarterback fumble than throw a pick. So
there was an interesting point that yesterday his average depth of target was 6.8 yards, which is 3 yards shorter than it was on average in 2019.
It made sense. It seemed like a lot of what they seemed to take what I watched of them. It seemed like a lot of the Ravens playbook where they tried to rush it with him a lot, rush it with the running backs a lot, and do a lot of shorter passes, which it was working out a lot for them, and they kind of just dismantled them. I know the score shows there's 10 points in between, but it was Buffalo's game the entire game, so it never once felt like the Jets were going to win anything. Stephon Diggs looked good, even though he didn't find the end zone. He still ended in a full PPR at around 16 or 17 points, which is what you want from him. John Brown, he looked surprisingly good. He was really good last year, but I thought with Diggs coming in, he would see some sort of regression. But he still led the league in targets. Led the team in targets.
By 1.
Yeah, by 1. But that being said, the running game for the Bills was a little strange.
I do want to mention as well that Josh Allen did miss he did miss John Brown on an open touchdown.
Yeah, he did.
So he should have had finished the game with 2 touchdowns, which would have been huge for him.
But yeah, the running game was strange. Josh Allen, what they've used with him was more than they've used him in the past, and I thought it was working really well, other than the fumbles, obviously. However, neither of the backs could really get anything going. 9 for 30 and 9 for 11. However, they were fine in the catching game. Not great, but they're fine.
I would like to point in, I'm kind of just interjecting so I don't have to talk a ton when you're done. I will say it's worth noting that I would be a little nervous if I was a Devin Singletary owner.
Absolutely.
Just given that they had 9 carries apiece. I think one of the people are going to look at Zach Moss's box score and say that, 9 rushes for 11 yards. That's awful. It's important also to look at that he had negative yards before contact as well. So when you're getting hit before you even hit the line of scrimmage, that's obviously not your fault.
No, yeah. So, when I was watching it seemed like he was getting tripped up in the backfield. It's like, well, geez, what was he supposed to do?
Yeah, so that's something that's kind of a big deal, and I think a lot of people might write that off, but I think he might be a good guy even to target as a trade piece.
Yeah, and he even his touchdown catch that he had was on a broken play, and he found the opening. So it was an intelligent play. So it wasn't just a bogus touchdown he got. He created it for himself. Regarding the Eagles, there was really only one bright spot, or I guess maybe 1.5. And
you mean the Washington football team?
no, I mean the Jets.
You said Eagles.
Oh, well, I meant the Jets.
Oh, okay.
We're both off. But there's one bright spot, and that was Jamison Crowder. 13 targets out of 33. So what's that, like a 40% share? Something along those lines.
He had over one-third.
115 yards and a touchdown. Granted, one of his touchdowns was like the Robbie Anderson one that we'll talk later, where he broke like 6 tackles and just ran it straight in, which was kind of nonsense.
Hey,
but
did you see the Robbie Anderson play?
What?
He smoked the DB on a move.
Well,
He broke the guy's ankles. That's
fine.
When
This one was less impressive, but what I mean is, like, it was one of those plays where, like, yeah, that won't happen again.
He definitely looked quick though.
Yeah, but even without that one, he still would have had 50 yards on 6 catches, which isn't bad considering their pass game was so poor, and the Bills' pass defense is very good. Le'Veon looked terrible, much to very few people's surprises. When it came to running on the ground, Frank Gore found more success. Le'Veon did look okay in the catching the balls. Unfortunately, they only targeted him twice, which, again, Adam Gase has me scratching my head as to why they would go after Le'Veon if they're not going to utilize his strengths.
Well, he didn't want Le'Veon, but...
Well, fine. I mean, but if you have him, you might as well utilize his strengths.
No, I'd agree.
And the half bright spot was Chris Herndon. First off, that fumble was not a fumble. But secondly, I know it's only 37 yards, but he still had 6 catches and 7 targets. So that's at least encouraging because they're trying to get him the ball. And for tight ends, a lot of time that's all you need. Like the Vance McDonald's, I remember last year get like 2 catches for 40 yards. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I'd rather have a guy getting 6 catches for 40 yards because there's at least opportunity for something. Whereas they or 2 for 20, like just a dud. But yeah, I didn't think that was a fumble, but it really tanked his average for the week. But without that, he would have had a fine day as well.
Yeah, I think that. I know we talked a lot about these games already. I would say my expectations would be a little tempered with Crowder just because I think it was a 70-yard breakout like you had mentioned.
Probably not happening.
But when you're getting 13 targets in a game, I still think he's a good play. I just don't know if I'd expect him to put up huge numbers all the time. I think he'll always be, especially in a PPR league, he's always going to have a nice floor, but I wouldn't expect quite so many. As long as 69, I wouldn't be expecting quite as many.
Yeah, if he's available, obviously pick him up.
He's no way he's available, but at least I don't think so. But I think the Jets are going to be bad, but I think that the Buffalo defense is good enough that it's going to make them look worse than they are. So I'm a little bullish on the Jets still. And by that, I guess I mean the only guy I'd really want to keep playing at this point is Crowder, maybe Herndon. But
do you think that the Jets should tank for Trevor Lawrence? I've heard people saying that.
I think the Jets should start with the coaching first and work their way out. I'd get rid of Bell and Gase and work from there. But if nothing else, they should tank to either. I mean, if they traded out, they'd get the world's biggest haul. That'd probably be a record haul.
And they could probably get rid of the Le'Veon Bell contract in there with it.
It'd be interesting to see what they could do. So, but yeah, outside of Crowder and Herndon, I'm not too excited about anything on that end. I do really like John Brown still. I think John Brown way outperformed what I was expecting him to, and I think he's a good play. And if somebody's willing to give him up cheap, he might be a good option
even after the games, Diggs said that he's the most underrated receiver in the league, which I don't know if that's fully true, but at least it's a relatively true statement.
Yeah,
nobody views him as good. I mean, he's pretty good.
So the next game we have, and we'll try to move a little quicker here. Next game we have is Seahawks versus Falcons. Are you ready for this, or do you want me to start? Okay, perfect.
So it seemed a lot like last year with the Falcons, down $1 billion, and then all of a sudden, Matt Ryan decides, okay, I'm actually going to be effective. And he ended with 450 yards, which is crazy. 2 touchdowns and an interception. Pretty good day for him. The running attack was a little lackluster. Todd Gurley, a pedestrian, 4 yards per carry and a touchdown. He had, I believe, like 13 or 14 points in the first quarter and then ended with less than 20. So he started hot and kind of slowed down. One thing that concerned me with him especially was 5 targets, 2 catches, 1 yard, where receiving is a big part of his game, and he could not get anything going. That being said, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, both with 12 targets and 9 catches each, both killed it. We both talked about Calvin Ridley having a breakout year, and this is just further proof of it. Granted, I don't see Matt Ryan throwing for another 450 yards in a game.
It's hard to call it a breakout when he had 900 and
Well, no, but
10
like
touchdowns last year.
Yeah, he was in between 8 and 900, but like nobody views 8 and 900 as like elite or like good. That guy, yeah, it's fine. Whereas like I feel like he could easily get into the 1200 range this year if healthy. The Seahawks, Russell Wilson was fantastic to no one's surprise.
Which is crazy considering he got pressured on 31% of his dropbacks.
Yeah, he was using Chris Carson a lot in the receiving game on the first couple of drives and was working very effectively. However, they kind of just got rid of. I think once they got the lead, they kind of just sat Chris Carson because he's still recovering from that injury. And because Carlos Hyde and a bunch of other people got carries after that too. But Carlos Hyde looked really good when he was in. Mm-hmm. The DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett looked good. And yeah, even Greg Olsen caught a touchdown. I'd be a little worried just because it's only 4 targets, but he caught all 4, but it was only for 24 yards. So we'll see. But he did exceed my expectations. But yeah, that's what I got out of all this.
A couple other side notes is, I thought I don't know if this speaks more towards the Falcons or if it speaks more towards the Seahawks, but the Falcons were able to get 4 sacks, which is definitely not a bad outing by them. It's even crazier considering they were able to get that much pressure and still gave up 38 points. So obviously the secondary is not getting it done, but Russell Wilson's a surgeon back there, and he's extremely good. His pass to DK Metcalf was just awesome.
Yeah.
That rainbow, it was sick. I would be a little worried about Carson in the sense that Carlos Hyde actually outrushed him with 7 attempts to 6. I mean, on a team that you would consider to be a run-heavy team, your top 2 guys combining for 13 carries is not exactly what I would call run-heavy by
especially when they were up by so much. That was one thing I was curious about because they were up. They were up, I believe it was 28-12 at one point. So in the fourth quarter. So it's like, man, why aren't you guys running more? I agree with that.
Yeah, and I do think that the Metcalf-Lockett combination, I think I downplayed what Metcalf was going to do a little bit at the beginning of the season.
I definitely did.
I didn't tank him, but I thought Lockett would be significantly, and by significant I don't mean like a massive margin, but I thought it would be significant enough to have one far outrank the other. I was a little surprised 8 targets apiece. I think that's going to be more of a 50-50 if not DK getting more work.
The crazy part is Lockett had less yards but caught all 8 of them. Mm-hmm. Fun fact.
Yeah, DK is always going to be the downfield stretch guy given his route tree.
He's another one of those guys where he'll get like 3 catches a game, but he'll average like 15 fantasy points a week. It's like, how does he do that?
It's the Tyreek Hill thing. When you're an elite downfield guy, and you get that. You just need one play of single coverage that you get open on.
He gets every time because Wilson's so good at the deep ball.
Same with Mahomes. A lot of it just depends how good your quarterback is.
Statistically, I heard that Russell Wilson is the best deep ball threat in the league. Fun fact.
Probably. He's extremely good.
By the numbers.
One other thing of note I thought was that it was interesting that Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage all had the same exact amount of receptions and targets. They all had 9 catches on 12 targets. So that was something easy. I wasn't expecting Gage to be there.
No.
So just something to keep in mind. Obviously, Julio's the main guy there, and there seems to be a clear pecking order, but it is of note that they're all getting a lot of work, which obviously that means there could be potential value there. So just one other thing I wanted to mention there. Any last second notes on that, or are we ready to move to the Raiders-Panthers?
Hayden Hurst was a tad disappointing, but it's one game, as we've already spoke about this. It was game 1, so, I mean, still 40 yards isn't terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't give up on him quite yet, but when they're throwing the ball as much as they did, I think Ryan had 451 yards. When they're throwing it as much as they are there, I get it
like 50 times and he gets 4 targets. It's a little worrisome.
Yeah, it is. I would wait another week or 2 to see what I feel about that. But for now, he's kind of just a wait and see. Mm-hmm. So the next game is going to be the Panthers. Like we said, Panthers Raiders. Raiders won 34-30. Brandon, did you have any notes on this one right off the bat here?
Yeah, I clicked the wrong tab.
No, you're good. I can start too.
Yeah, go for it.
I did think it was something of note that Josh Jacobs had a career high in reception yards and receptions. He had 4 catches for 46 yards, which it was kind of surprised me that this was career highs in both of those.
He only had like 150 yards last year.
Yeah, he really wasn't used in the pass game. Mm-mm. I think if anything, this teaches us that he definitely should have been ranked higher than he was. Yeah, I think where he was going with running backs, obviously just it's 1 week and they're playing the Panthers who, let's just be fair, I believe that they gave up the 2nd or 3rd most points in fantasy last year.
Yeah, they gave up a bunch.
So their defense is terrible. So I want to, be a little wary of that, but I do think it's notable. I mean, 25 carries is awesome. Again, I am a little concerned because he only averaged 3.7 yards a carry. And
He's
that's
he was stopped by the goal line 3 times.
I mean, and
technically,
fair,
he had rushes stopped.
It's just and I'm not trying to be yards per carry guy here, but that just would be a little concerning to me that you have 25 rushes and that's the best you can do against a terrible team. So I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying don't play him next week. Obviously, I'm just saying I would be a little concerned about that, but I think he's going to be great. And then Ruggs tied Waller in the first half for the most team targets and led the Raiders with 55 reception yards. So, I think that, and obviously Ruggs ended up getting hurt, and that's kind of why I had that note. I think he's going to be very good, and he's proven that he's, along with Waller there, I think those two are probably going to be the 1-2 in terms of receiving attempts and catches there. And so I really like him this year as well. On the Panthers side, there wasn't too much that was honestly surprising. I do think that we slept a little bit on Robbie Anderson. And I know you're going to say that his play was a little fluky, but I just think that he's a good enough player that that's something he can do. I mean, he still had 6 receptions on 8 targets. So I'm expecting him to have a pretty heavy workload.
Yeah, just without that, what concerns me is he would have had, 40 yards on 5 catches? Like, that I don't know.
That catch would have been something.
Yeah, I guess.
I think that, and he's the best downfield option they have as far as I'm concerned. And so I don't want to say I really like him, but I think he's going to produce a lot more value than we originally thought.
Yeah, just because neither one of us gave him any value at all.
Well, I mean, in the our local fantasy draft, I got him, I think, 25 or 30 slots after he was, his auto pick would have been. And so I think that he's going to actually be a nice potential DFS or best ball play from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that his value is extremely good. I'm not saying he's going to go for 115 and a touchdown every week, but he seems like one of those Deshaun Jackson guys who's randomly going to have, big weeks here and there. So I think he was extremely undervalued.
Yeah, going off that, it really shows or reemphasizes to me how underwhelming Teddy Bridgewater is. I know they won. Or no, they didn't lose. They just lost. Sorry. They had the lead at the end. But without that one throw, which was all Robbie's doing and very little of his doing, he would have ended with 195 yards and no touchdowns.
He doesn't turn the ball over, though, so he's always going to be competitive.
Yeah, it's just annoying. It's like, okay, you have two, like as a starting quarterback, if you're like, all right, you have 34 attempts, you get 200 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. I don't view that as good.
Oh, I definitely don't appreciate him either.
Yeah, and Twitter seems to love the guy, which always drives me crazy. But yeah, to reiterate what you said, the Josh Jacobs usage in the receiving game honestly was very surprising to me. They said they were going to up it, but I didn't know he'd get essentially a third of his production from last year in week 1. So that was a nice surprise for owners of him. They fed him the ball a lot too, which was encouraging. I'm trying to look. Jalen Richard, who's usually viewed as the pass-catching back, only got 1 target to his, I believe, 5. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, to his 6, excuse me. So the fear that Richard would take some of his receiving work, it doesn't exist. At least after week 1. McCaffrey was what we expected. I did expect a little more receiving work out of him, especially with Bridgewater, but it's been 1 week, so it could increase. But yeah, 3 catches was a little low for him. But yeah, not many surprises other than that. Like Henry Ruggs looked good, but I expected him to look good. DJ Moore didn't do much, but with Teddy, I didn't really expect him to do nearly as much as he did last year either.
It's going to be hard to support 3 receivers on a weekly basis,
especially with Teddy throwing the ball. But yeah, not many. And even with McCaffrey is also essentially a 4th receiver too. So at that point, I would be worried if I were an owner of Anderson, Moore, and Samuel, especially Samuel and Moore, considering Moore was drafted the 4th round, something like that.
Yeah, the other guys you didn't spend too much.
No, like Robbie Anderson, you spent like a 12th on. It's like, okay, well, if he doesn't work, he doesn't work. But DJ Moore fans, this further emphasized what I was afraid of before the season.
No, exactly. So the next game we're going to go ahead and move into is going to be the dumpster fire that was the Bears-Lions.
Oh, jeez.
The Bears, I'm going to put an asterisk by it due to Swift dropping an open touchdown, but the Bears did win this game 27-23 in what was honestly, sadly, one of the more exciting games of the day yesterday. couple notes that I had on this game and these are most of the notes that we're doing are fantasy perspective. We're not necessarily breaking down the X's and O's of actual football. One note that I thought was funny was that both quarterbacks were under 45% completion in the first half.
Yeah, they were both struggling a lot.
This is the kind of game this was. So, in an unexpected move, honestly, this might have been the most unexpected move, at least for me, of the day. AP had 14 rushes for 93 yards and 3 receptions, of all things, for 21. He had the most touches and the second most snaps. Swift actually played the most snaps, but you wouldn't have been able to tell, or he wasn't used in a position where that mattered.
Nor should have he.
A couple other big items, and these are just more so to store in the back of your head or maybe a deeper league. Quintez Cephas, I hope I got that name right. He had 10 targets yesterday.
I saw that.
Which is absolutely wild. He's a rookie, and I wasn't expecting that. Again, we're putting in this in the back of the head because Kenny Galladay was out. This is going to change when he's back, but it is something that he might be an interesting stash, like we said, in deeper leagues or a dynasty. But it is interesting to see. Maybe he's going to be on a waiver wire coming up later. We'll have to see on that. Danny Amendola did lead the team in yards, which if that, that's never exciting nor a good thing if that happens. Miller led the Bears. Anthony Miller led the Bears in yards, but he trailed behind Robinson in targets. Robinson had a lot of really nice catches this game. He looked very good. Anthony Miller looked all right, and just overall, neither of these teams looked that great. But I do think Robinson was looking very good. I would feel good if I picked him.
Yeah, I like him. I like Adrian Peterson, especially for him going undrafted. Stafford did leave a little to be desired, but we had that dropped wide open catch, the perfect throw that Swift dropped, and that's exactly why I like Peterson even more. First off, he looks good in the receiving game for him at least.
It was his first time back in quite a while.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Because of the back, and obviously Mitch.
I think Peterson, that drop helps Peterson a lot too, because after that drop, first off on the ground, Peterson was leaps and bounds better, more effective than DeAndre Swift. In the receiving game, he was more effective on less targets.
Swift did get the rushing touchdown on 3 carries.
Yeah, I guess.
Kind of sucks as a Peterson, if you're a Peterson fan.
But that being said, Peterson was more effective in every aspect of the game, and he didn't drop the game when he touchdown. That was wide open. So I feel like this game was the worst game that DeAndre Swift could have had. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Peterson's going to be the lead guy after this, at least for a while. Kerryon Johnson, 7 carries for 14 yards, the most Kerryon Johnson game of all time.
He did outpace Swift, though, which is notable.
But yeah, I guess. But that backfield, Peterson's the only one I'd want.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a disaster.
And regarding the other backfield, I still don't like David Montgomery. I know you might say 13 carries for 64 yards. That's 5 yards a carry. That's really good.
Detroit is known for how good the defense is.
No, their defense is terrible. They gave up 41 yards to Tariq Cohen on 5.9 yards per carry, 8.7 to Mitch Trubisky. Hell, they even let Cordell Patterson average 4.8.
I was very disappointed with Cohen, by the way. A lot of people, myself included, were expecting a big day from him, and he just really – I'm not even saying it's his fault, but he really didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's like I was initially excited when I was like, ooh, David Montgomery's looking all right. And then I looked at it, I'm like, oh, no, never mind. Everybody looks good running against the Lions, so never mind. Trubisky was surprising with his 3 touchdowns at the end, but, yeah, I don't like really anybody on the Bears other than Robinson.
The Anthony Miller throw he had a nice throw to Anthony Miller.
He did. Hockenson, I guess, 5 targets, 5 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. That's good. One thing that is concerning, though, 42 attempts, 5 targets. That's a little worrisome, especially with Kenny Galladay gone. But we will see. I was a little bit disappointed with Marvin Jones as well.
Yeah, you would have thought he would have stepped up a little bit. I agree. I thought he was going to be a nice play in DFS or something like that. But apparently he felt differently about that. Do you have any other notes on that game?
That's good.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the Packers-Vikings. Green Bay won this game 43-34. I will say that this game, if you just look at the box score, it looks like it was close. This game was never really close. The Packers, and I know that I'm the biased Packer fan here, but the Packers essentially they took over early, and it was never a game, regardless of the box score, kind of like the Cowboys game last year. As far as any big takeaways, I thought Aaron Rodgers looked very good yesterday. It is kind of a weird thing. I know I mentioned this to you earlier. but apparently the intermediate level of the field, which is between, and I told you this incorrectly earlier, it's between 5 and 19 yards downfield. So they only did 34% of all throws were in that area last year, and this is the area that Rodgers has been struggling in. I know a lot of people have been portraying the narrative that he's been regressing, and that's essentially the area which they're referencing. They were the lowest in the NFL last year at 34%, like I said, and yesterday they only threw at 27% in between those areas. And so I thought that was a really interesting thing to see. I don't know how notable it is, but it was definitely kind of weird.
Yeah.
Obviously, Devontae Adams, was a monster yesterday. I would expect that to continue. This is the reason we always have, everybody always has him ranked so high every year. And if it's between Aaron Rodgers getting hurt or him getting hurt, I know a lot of people kind of sleep on him and they don't consider the Packers offense to be all that good. But he really balled out yesterday, and I really liked what we saw from him. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I thought he also had a really nice day. He's going to be on the waiver preview show coming up in a little bit here.
Ooh.
Oh, I know, right? Very, very exciting. He put together kind of a surprise day. He had the second most targets on the team, tied with Aaron Jones, but he had 6 targets with 4 catches for 96 and a touchdown, obviously one of those being the long catch, but he did drop a pretty open one that he could have had some yards on, and it's obvious Rodgers liked him and has developed a lot more rapport with him. No reason to really talk too much about Aaron Jones. He did his thing yesterday. As far as Minnesota, Thielen was fine, but a lot of the damage came in the second half garbage time.
Nothing.
Kirk Cousins was embarrassing with his attempts. Didn't he only have 2 completions or something in the first half?
Which again, it's hard to blame him. It's not like all right, Kirk, go call the plays. But at the same time, it's like through the first quarter, I think he had two attempts.
It's a diss to him because they're saying we don't want you to throw the ball.
They were weird because their plays run. They only ran 47 plays.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook only has 12 carries, and Kirk only has Kirk only has 25.
Yeah, they only
attempts.
ran the ball ran 47 plays to the Packers 76.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So yeah, the score might look close. It was not close at all. Yeah, Dalvin Cook looked all right. He got saved by a pair of touchdowns, but without that, it would have been an average day at best. His receiving game was non-existent as well. If we look at the Packers, obviously Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling was also fine. Allen Lazard, he got a touchdown, then I think a 2-point conversion right after it as well. So he seems to be doing better as well than he was last year. Aaron Jones was fine. One thing I was concerned, his receiving game also seemed to took a big dip compared to last year. It seemed like last year he'd get 5 catches for 50 yards on a relatively normal basis. This week he had 4 catches for 10. I know it's only one week.
Still not bad. 6 targets isn't terrible though.
No, targets is fine, but for 2.5 a catch, that for him that's pretty bad. Granted, it's 1 week, so if this keeps happening, then it should be worth concerning. But just something to note.
I'm a little worried about Viking defense.
Oh yeah, they got dissected.
Which is, I know they have some injured players, but this could also be kind of a good thing to watch moving forward against teams that play them, or even I think this helps Adam Thielen out a lot because it looks like there's going to be garbage time. If the Packers are blowing somebody out,
I don't know how the Vikings were favored.
This was one that I was confused.
Yeah,
about
they got significantly worse from last year, and the Packers had their number last year. So hey, we got beat twice last year. Now we are even worse, and now we're the favorites.
This is one of the games that I was definitely trying to bet on.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
So next game is going to go ahead and be Chargers-Bengals. This game was another disaster that was actually kind of a fun game to watch.
Thankfully, both sides imploded, so it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, it was reminiscent of the Phillip Rivers Chargers. But Brandon, did you want to start us out on this game?
Yeah. First, this is a weird game. I'm going to start with the rush. First off, Tyrod Taylor had a Tyrod Taylor game, 200 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Ooh. He's Teddy. Yeah, he showed up. He woke up feeling dangerous. He was essentially Teddy Bridgewater 2.0. We have Austin Eckler, who had one of the strangest games of the week to me, because last year he did most of his damage in the catching game and not much from rushing. But this week, 19 carries, 84 yards, 4.4 yard per carry. That's fine. And Jonathan Kelly actually got a lot more carries than I thought he would too. But and the touchdown. But then in the receiving game, what really, really, really threw me off was Austin Eckler, 1 target, 1 catch, 3 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an owner of him, especially in PPR, that is, after spending a second-round pick on him, that's like your worst nightmare. Because that's why you got him. So I know it's 1 week, but he went from getting, 7, 8 targets a game to 1. And then we go and watch Phillip Rivers dump it off to his running backs. And I believe there was, 17 targets between his running backs in Indianapolis, which has me wondering if his success in the catch game, obviously he's good at it, but if they weren't drawn up for him, if just Phillip had to dump it to him at the last second.
I do think it's important to note, though, that as far as the rushing, there were 39 carries by the Chargers and 16 receptions.
Completions.
I mean, there were only 29 targets. So they were clearly going run heavy. But kind of to your point, I would expect a team who is doing this to rely on easy catches, which is usually what Eckler is all about. So I was kind of confused. I would say that his carries did go way up, so I wouldn't be panicking because normally he would never be getting near 19. So I wouldn't be panicking, but
I'd be worried, though.
I'm kind of panicking if I'm the Chargers or if I have a lot of Chargers on my fantasy team. I mean, 16 is the best you can do against the Bengals. I mean, they had the number 1 pick last year.
Well, yeah, it's Joe Burrow's and I don't think the Bengals are going to be horrible.
The Bengals should have won yesterday, too. I mean, A.J. Green gets I think it was a good call, but he got that pass interference call at the end, which he scored on, which that should have won it. And then Bullock, or whoever it was,
pulled his hamstring or his calf.
He just shanked a 30-yard field goal. The best part was he reached down to his right leg,
his shin,
and then he described in the post-game interview that he strained his left calf. So
I
don't know what exactly happened.
He reaches down and holds the front of his shin. What is that, like your tibia or fibia? You strain your bone?
I'm not a Bengals fan. I don't care at all about the Bengals. That hurt me to see that
That's
the
tough.
end of that game. That was like watching your team lose to a half-court buzzer beater. Like, that just sucks.
Yeah, and speaking of the Chargers, A.J. Green was, let's just say hypothetically he caught that ball. He would have had a very good day. Even without that, he still had a fine day, worthy of a flex play at least. So I think his floor is, if he could stay healthy, is pretty high.
Burrow did look good. One thing to keep in mind, and I know a lot of, this is more of a side note than me trying to make any huge points, but his target depth was 5.4 yards, so nothing huge.
No.
I think that's going to be something that, definitely plays into how many yards, guys like Boyd and A.J. Green have, is they might end up with a lot of catches, but unless it's more downfield, it's going to be a little harder for them to, rack in a lot of those big yardage totals.
5 catches, 51 yards for A.J. Green isn't incredible. Mm-hmm. But I was expecting him to be somewhere around the 60-yard range, so, I wasn't disappointed.
It's just kind of a joke, but it's essentially both their first games in the NFL in, almost 2 years for Green, and obviously the first time for Burrow. But Burrow actually looked pretty good. I thought the 2-minute drill or minute drill, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the game looked very, very good, very sharp. And so I have reason to like him. Another thing that I thought was of note was T. Higgins had no targets. I know a lot of people were kind of excited about him. I was going to say that.
T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd was a bit disappointing too.
Yeah, they didn't really go to him in the first half, and which was kind of surprising. And so I would expect him to go up a little bit. I would almost call him, I know after week 1 most people don't do this kind of stuff, but I would kind of almost consider him a buy low candidate. The Josh Kelly thing, I think, and we're going to talk about him later, but I think he is going to be another big ad this week.
Yeah.
I would definitely target him this week a lot. I think they're going to use both guys. Like we said at the beginning, the split from the run to pass is obviously favoring the rush, and so as long as Tyrod's there, I would expect that to be the same. But even if Justin Herbert got in, I don't know why they'd start throwing all of a sudden. So I'm expecting them to remain very run heavy, especially with the usage that Eckler gets. He's also, I know this is, playing on this stuff, but Kelly's also good insurance just in case he were to go down. He's getting good yards as is, plus he's a high upside play. So we're going to talk about him a little later as well. But any final notes on that game?
Nope.
All right. Sounds good. We're going to move next to, I don't even know what to call this one. I think I'm going to call it a train wreck as well, but we're going to move on to the Saints-Bucks. This game, the Buccaneers lost 23-34. I would say the game was not quite as close as this would say. Just on a couple big notes, Brady, I didn't think he looked terrible. I know a lot of people are quick to say he's awful, he sucks. I don't think it was really a case of him being that bad. There were a lot of reports that he was having trouble with the playbook, going into and like being sharp going into this week. He had the thing on his arm, the wrist thing for the plays, and there were a lot of points there where there was confusion. I think that led to at least one of the interceptions to Mike Evans.
I was going to say, if you take away that one bad throw, he really didn't have a bad game.
Yeah, and I think just a lot of it's going to be the rapport with the receivers and just kind of getting, settling into things. And so I'm not really worried about him. I'd be much more worried about Gronk. As we stated, I thought he'd be a little better than that, but I was not expecting him to be some kind of awesome player or anything like that. Ronald Jones was kind of, we thought that Leonard Fournette might actually lead the backfield, but Ronald Jones had the 17 carries for 66 yards. This is probably a backfield where I'm still kind of ignoring it. I wouldn't feel safe playing him again next week. I think Fournette would go up a little bit, but that's hard to tell.
Can't really go much lower.
Yeah,
5 carries for 5 yards.
I think the Saints defense is better than we're getting.
No, they're supposed to be good.
Give it credit for. On the opposite end, I would say one of the more surprising notes was that Latavius Murray outtouched Alvin Kamara by 15-12.
That doesn't surprise me. Just to the fact Kamara had 12 for 16. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of the game, they're probably like, well, whatever's going on with Alvin isn't working.
And, of course, 12 for 16 with the touchdown. But to be fair, Latavius Murray only had 48 yards on 15.
No, I know.
So I think the Bucs defense is also underrated. I thought this was a sneaky good defense game. I didn't think Drew Brees looked that good, personally.
No.
His arm looks just very weak. And obviously with Michael Thomas being hurt, I'm honestly kind of concerned about the Saints in terms of what their ceiling is. We're not going to really talk about it, but I do think that where was he? Tre'Quan Smith. There he is. I think Tre'Quan Smith might be a sneaky, deep add if Thomas missed some time or if he's kind of sidelined or, as a decoy. So that's a guy I like, maybe even a little more than Emmanuel Sanders there.
Another deep add would probably be Scotty Miller.
Mm-hmm. He's going to show up on my waivers as well.
He looked good.
But like you said, he had the second most team receptions. And so just behind Godwin there, I know Evans is limited, but obviously that's a good thing. And if he already has the rapport with Brady, I think that it can really only go up from there. One last final note for me before I pass it over to you. I guess I have two more. Excuse me. Was that O.J. Howard? He was the most targeted tight end. He had the most receptions with 4. Gronk only had 2. I'd expect Gronk to get a little more worked in as we go. But O.J. Howard at this point is the better tight end physically. And so I would expect him to – I'm not going to call him even an ad right now, but
might be.
I'm peaked. My interest is peaked. And then the last note I have was that Jared Cook and Alvin Kamara had the most receptions at 5 apiece. Mm-hmm. Just something to keep in mind, which that is kind of shocking given that Michael Thomas is on that team. So just something I wanted to keep in mind. I know I went a little long on that, but I'll pass it back to you for any.
The 46-yard catch is. I remember when we did the tight end episode, it's like he had 2 catches for 50 yards. He's never going to do that. And then he has the 46-yard catch this week again. So maybe I could be wrong on Jared Cook, but I'm still not sold on him.
I think he's good. But
looking at it, it looks like Ronald Jones was the piece that surprised me the most in Tampa Bay just because there were only 26 carries and he had 17 of them, which is obviously the majority. And he also led the running backs in targets, which also – that didn't surprise me, but I was just surprised to see him out-touch Fournette 19-6, which it could be because he's still new there, but Ronald Jones got a lot more work than I thought, which is good for Ronald Jones owners.
All 3 of them out there. I still don't know. I don't know if I'd be rushing to the waiver wire to pick him up.
Just Ronald Jones?
Yeah.
I bet he's drafted.
I'm sorry. No, excuse me. I got confused who I was thinking. No, he's definitely not on the waivers.
Okay, yeah.
If he was, I would pick him up. I'm sorry. I got confused with who we were talking about for half a second.
It'd be all confused.
The next game that we have is going to be the Cardinals versus the 49ers. The Cardinals, I guess most people, including myself, would say surprisingly beat the Niners 24-20. I would say the biggest takeaway here is that Jimmy Garoppolo is not very good, but and that DeAndre Hopkins is just a monster. Sadly, I had him and Devontae Adams in the league, and I lost handily. So that should tell you all you need to know about how bad my team is. But Kyler Murray, obviously, he had 13 carries for 91 yards and a touch, getting it done on the ground. He looked okay as a passer, pretty good. he obviously essentially force-fed DeAndre Hopkins, who had the most targets by a ton. He had 16 targets in this game with 14 receptions, which is a crazy catch rate. The next best guy we had a tie for 5 targets apiece.
Sure-handed Fitz.
This makes me think that Fitzgerald is as good as a drop at this point. He's one of those guys that he's good for what his role is at this point, but I don't think that's as a big-time score.
Still, even at a full PPR, he still ended with 7.5 points.
I mean, is that the best you can do in full PPR?
But when every single target went to one guy, I don't see that happening every game either.
Believe it or not, I kind of would think so. This is one of the best defenses they're going to be playing all year, and it's one of those things. If Hopkins is doing that against an elite defensive team, I don't know why it wouldn't continue against anybody else. But I do agree that I don't think it's going to be a 16-5 target split every game. That I think that'll even out, but I still think Hopkins will be essentially the clear leader, and this kind of shows that we all kind of did a bad job with how we initially ranked Hopkins. There's clearly a lot more rapport there than we thought. Kenyon Drake was pretty disappointing. He did get 16 carries, which is good, but through the air, he only had 2 targets, so that was kind of a big bummer that a lot of people were looking for.
They also were losing most of the game too, though.
Yeah, that's something.
Granted, it wasn't by a bunch, but I think at one point they were down 13-7, which isn't a ton, but they're still losing. So,
yeah, I'm definitely not nervous really about Kenyon Drake. Like I said, he did pretty well, and the Niners' run defense is very good. So I'm not overly worried there. I was very impressed by Mostert. Again, he maybe not so much the rushing, but his receiving was very good. I know he only had 4 receptions, but that one he obviously had his huge sprint, the 76 yards the 76-yard long, and so he put together a nice week. So I think he's going to be a little better than his ADP suggested during the draft.
I was going to say the opposite.
Really?
Maybe not the opposite. I was going to say that I was really excited about him and thought that he was being very undervalued. And I wanted him, but people kept taking him because he'd usually be around the 5th. I'm like, I could sneak him early in the 4th and be fine. But people would always get him early in the 4th, so I get upset. Because I'm like, well, I should have got him earlier. That being said, him on the ground wasn't all that impressive. And I know I've said this 5 times. You take away his 1 catch, he had a bad week.
Yeah, but the Cardinals' defense looked pretty solid.
Not only that, but I was making fun of him earlier this week, but Jerick McKinnon, 3 catches. They both would have had 3 catches on 5 targets. Take away that 1 catch. He's being used just as much as him in the receiving game. And I like him, don't get me wrong, and I'd like him on my team. But at the same time, this was not the most encouraging situation. Just because last year, he averaged, almost 4 yards of carry before contact. This week, he didn't even average 4 yards of carry. So
I would say it's one game. They're losing.
Oh, I know.
There's a lot of factors.
It's just, I don't know. I was expecting him to be a monster, and he had that big play, so obviously he put up a monster number. But he didn't feel like a monster this week.
No, not as much as you would have thought. Trying to think if I had one last takeaway, which is that I know Kittle did get hurt, but Mostert and Kittle led the team with 4 receptions, and no other Niner had more than 5 targets. So I thought that was kind of a wacky stat and one that I would expect not to continue, but just something that was noteworthy on that. Did you have any last second items to add to that?
I didn't.
Or are you ready for the? Oh!
I did not.
Are you ready for the Browns Ravens?
Oh, Browns Ravens. I forgot about that.
Incredible Browns Ravens game. And by incredible, the Ravens won this game 38-6. I think we're expecting them to win, just not that badly.
No.
I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I think the big thing to worry about on the Cleveland side, I believe Duke Johnson, I don't think we mentioned. Oh, wait, he's not in this game. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Kareem Hunt. I don't know why. My brain works in weird ways. I think he was hurt and we never mentioned it. I don't know why. I just thought that now. But Kareem Hunt out-touched Nick Chubb, which I think was one of the bigger surprises of the day. And something I was a little bit surprised by. I do not expect this trend to continue moving forward. I think a lot of this was game script, as you're not trying to run the ball a whole lot when you're down a ton of points. But just something that's definitely noteworthy. Jarvis Landry led the team again in yards and receptions.
To no one's surprise.
This is why I had him very high in my rankings. And I know that he didn't put up that many points this week, but I just think, especially against a worse defense, I just think he's going to be the consistent guy. And let's just say it how it is. Baker is not very accurate. He missed Odell all over the place yesterday. Odell got 10 targets to Landry's 6, but with only 3 completions or receptions.
22 yards.
Yeah, and if you watch the film, Baker was just missing him everywhere. And so watch out for angry Odell coming up here soon. But it was just a tough look for Baker, tough
Perhaps
look for the
sooner
whole
than
offense.
we thought.
Yeah, it really might be. The other takeaway that I had, I just wanted to mention real quick, was that Mark Ingram led the team with carries. He had 7, and J.K. Dobbins had, he had 10, but J.K. Dobbins had 7.
It didn't feel like he led the team either.
Yeah, it was strange. I'm hoping, as somebody who owns him in a league, that's more of a game script thing. But it was a little bit concerning that J.K. had 2 touchdowns to Mark Ingram 0. So
yeah, I
thought
a little
concerning.
I thought the Mark Ingram thing just had to have been because they were up by so much. They're like, well, we have this older guy and we have this young guy who needs reps, and we're up by 30. Let's just give him the ball.
Yeah, it was
but
a little wild there.
This is one of the weirdest games of the week for me. First off,
It's very believable though.
Yeah,
it's one of those. If you would have, this is way less surprising than if you said, "Oh, hey, the Browns blew the Ravens."
Well, duh. But it was the thing. Like, I thought the Browns were better than this, and I did as well. And my expectations for the Browns were a 1 out of 10, and I was sorely disappointed. And that shows how poor they played, because I remember I'm like, well, they couldn't get any worse than last year. I'm like, well, they added a bunch of guys to the offensive line. Baker should have more time. They should be perfectly fine. And then I see the score, and not only the score, I watched the game. 6 points in the first quarter, and then they get shut out for 3 quarters straight. It ended up losing 38-6.
Yeah, not great.
It wasn't like Baker. I mean, obviously he sucked. 21 completions for 18 yards or 189 yards is not good. But it wasn't like he threw 4 picks. He threw 1 pick. So it wasn't like he was a disaster or just killing them. It's just they could not move the ball.
The old dodgeball line, couldn't hit the water if he fell out of the boat.
No, legit. Kareem Hunt in the Nick Chubb situation. If I were a Nick Chubb owner, which I am in Dynasty, I'd be not worried but concerned, and on borderline worried.
Your expectations are just tempered. He's not, I don't think, a top 8 guy anymore.
No, but it's the thing. We were all we're like, oh well, but it's not going to be a 50-50 split. Like, we'd say that, but it was more like a 60-40 Hunt, and I don't expect it to happen again. But when our expectations are it won't be 50-50 and it's worse than that week 1, that is concerning to say the least, especially because Kareem owns essentially all of the receiving, and he also owns some of the rushing. So it wasn't like half and half. It's like all and then some versus most and none, which is worrisome for Cook.
I am not panicking. I think he's still an okay buy low. I just don't think anybody who drafted him will probably sell low.
Yeah, exactly. The Ravens did again. There's one point Lamar Jackson had 17 yards and a touchdown, and every time I'm like, how does he do that? And they get turnovers in the opponent's 10-yard line. I don't know how they consistently do it, but they do, and it's incredible. Mark Andrews at one point, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns. All the stuff I say is, you can't do it again. They still keep doing it again. So I don't know. Mark Andrews looked really good though, and I was not expecting that. Marquise Brown looked a whole lot better than I thought he would too. And Willie Snead looked really good. Granted, they were dismantling arguably one of the worst teams in the league, who shouldn't be, but they are. So yeah, the strange part was the running game didn't seem all that good, and their passing game was killing it, which is the exact opposite of what it was last year.
No, exactly. We're gonna pick up the speed on the next couple. We're about an hour right now, so we need to get a move on it. Next game is going to be Colts versus Jaguars. The Colts lost this game 20-27. Brandon, did you have any notes you'd like to start out on these?
Yeah, Gardner Minshew is underrated. He's super underrated. I saw before the season everybody saying, "Oh, well, the Jags should just tank. They should just tank and get Lawrence. They should tank and get Lawrence." They have their guy. I mean, he is good. Like last year, of all the rookies statistically, he or Kyler Murray were the best.
Okay, so what's good mean? What is he a top 20 quarterback? Is he a top 10? What are you calling?
Well, it's the thing. He's had one. He hasn't even had a full season yet.
So what is good?
And I'd argue.
I just want you to define good.
I'd argue he's right in the middle.
And you think he's the 15th best, 16th best quarterback,
give or take. And he hasn't. He's
Huh? You think you think he could be like the 13th best quarterback?
Well, like in between like 13 to 20 in that area. But he hasn't even had a full season yet. And his weapons aren't that great either.
Oh, stop it.
Okay. He's got
Yes, they
DJ
are.
Chark now. Who else has he got? It's not like he's dealing with.
They have a lot of good skill positions.
It's not like he has Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Odell Beckham, David Njoku, Austin Hooper, and Jarvis Landry to throw.
Keelan Cole is a solid player.
He wouldn't even start on the Browns.
Well, the Browns also have like a very good receiving unit.
What I mean though is,
you're saying that like you pick a bad team.
he needs more respect. He doesn't throw the ball deep much, but when he does, good things happen. I mean, yeah, like his number 2 guy was Laviska Shenault. I can never say his name right. If that's your number 2 guy, that isn't the best.
I think you're underrating. I mean, there were only 19 receptions.
And their starting running back, James Robinson, literally got the job by default probably 2 days ago, or not, like a week ago, excuse me. So that being said, James Robinson is a must own because he had every single running back touch, every single one, or rush, excuse me. The other 2 people who rushed the ball were Gardner Minshew and a receiver. So he had 100% of the running back rushes. So I think he's going to be on a lot of maybe not a lot of some waiver wires. If you could get him, pick him up. I'm trying to think of anything else to take from this game. Phillip Rivers didn't look great. That's kind of not very much of a surprise. Naheem Hines, he was a lot better than I thought he'd be. I was expecting Jonathan Taylor to take the bulk of the workload, and I guess he technically did because he had 9 carries to Naheem's 7. But Naheem, he looked good, and he's another really good pickup.
Yeah, I think those are the takeaways. That obviously with Matt gone, Taylor should be the guy, but he was only averaging 2.4 yards per carry.
His receiving work was nice.
He did have 9 receptions, which definitely is nice.
6.
He did?
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor.
Did I write my numbers down? Did I write targets?
He had 6 on 6 targets, but for 67 yards.
Sorry, I don't know what I was doing there. But yeah, I thought he looked – I'm kind of on him, but I think he's obviously a great pickup now. They need somebody to run.
Especially with Phillip Rivers dumping off so much.
Well, I think Naheem Hines is going to take most of that. But
it was, I guess, he had 8. Wow, I didn't even see that. It was 8 to 6, I guess. But yeah, they both all the backs, I guess, will benefit from that. Even Marlon Mack had 3. So
yeah, they did a lot of short target stuff.
17 catches for running backs. That's insane.
I did think it was worth noting that no wide receiver had more than 47 yards on Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about them, maybe not so much from a touchdown standpoint. I think they're going to get touchdowns. It's just I'm a little worried about the yardage. I don't think Gardner's going to throw it all that much.
It was game script considering they only threw the ball 20 times. Which, I mean, how many?
They way outrushed. I mean, they had 23 carries and 20 targets. So that's another one of those weird things.
Yeah,
but
it was a
I'm
strange
not
game.
overly surprised by it. I didn't really have anything else to add to that. I think the Colts might be a little bit of a train wreck this year.
I think they're overrated.
I still want to see another week or 2 before I say that, but if they don't get it turned around quick, I think that's going to be a disaster.
Jacoby Brissett subbed in for 1 play and got sacked.
I still don't think Jacksonville is going to be very good, but we'll have to see about them. They may be
I think they'll be fine.
able to make 7-9, 8-8 just by not turning the ball over. But we'll have to see about them. Not a very exciting game, honestly. Next, we have Patriots versus Dolphins. This game wasn't even all that exciting. It was more so just, Cam Newton's back kind of thing. So let me find it here. The Patriots won this game 21-11. Again, the game was never all that exciting. Fitzmagic really never showed up. He was Fitzpatrick today.
Hate to see it.
Brandon, did you have any big takeaways from this game?
Well, before the game,
share quick.
Before the game, everyone was like, "Oh, well, like this isn't going to be easy for the Patriots." It's like, yeah, it is. The Dolphins still suck. The running game was non-existent again. I guess Myles Gaskin looked all right, but other than him,
the team in carries and tied for the most receptions.
Yeah, well, Jordan Howard got hurt, but yeah, Jordan Howard did not look good. I'm looking at this right now. Sony Michel still looked bad. I don't like any of the running backs in New England still. I guess in either team. Myles Gaskin maybe.
Cam's going to steal a lot of the goal.
Yeah, he's going to take a lot of that.
Definitely kind of neuters what any running back potential over there.
I like Julian Edelman. I like Devontae Parker, even though Devontae got hurt. Mike Gesicki was a little of a disappointment for me. There wasn't much to take away from this game. Yeah, the Dolphins aren't good.
Cam led the team in rushing, the Patriots in rushing yards and attempts. He was 15 for 75. Again, that really hurts the potential of Michel. If it was Tom Brady, I'd actually like Sony Michel quite a bit, but he really takes away a lot of the production that's available.
I could see them having a bunch of dirty wins, like because they had 42 carries to 19 attempts. Like they're just bleed the clock out and win by now. Like because they're better than winning by 10 against the Dolphins, but just the game script, they just kept it out of reach by running it like crazy.
I will say too that Preston Williams did lead the Dolphins in targets with 7. I know that didn't really equate to much, but I thought that was worth noting.
If the Patriots had a good running back, they'd actually be a problem.
See,
I guess better than Sony Michel.
I am not that into the Patriots this year. I mean, Fitzpatrick threw 3 interceptions and no touchdowns.
If they had a good running game, I mean, they'd be fine.
They got 87 yards out of 27 carries, and I mean, less than 200 passing yards. I mean, this was an awful day.
No, yeah, I don't see them winning the division. But if they had like a solid running game, I think they'd be okay.
And only won by 10. Or lost by 10. The Dolphins. I just, oh my. I'm just not very excited about I think the Patriots are a little overrated. I think a lot of people are talking about them like they're very good, and I just don't think that's the case.
I can see them like 7-9, 8-8.
And obviously, Cam's timing was a little off. He was missing a lot of throws to Edelman. Edelman was catching them, but they were a lot of behind him and sailing. And I think they're going to get better, but I think the Patriots are going to have to win a lot of games ugly, and I just don't think their ceiling is all that high, if I'm being completely honest. We will go ahead and move on to our last game of the night. We haven't seen enough of the last or the game that occurred tonight to really talk about it that much. We can talk about that on the next show really
The Steelers
quickly.
did win by 10, by the way.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah. I think that was pretty predictable. I'm going to have to look into the box score a little bit. From what I saw, Big Ben was not looking very good, and the Giants could not block. But we will talk more about that on, I believe, Wednesday or whenever the next show takes place.
Actually, I want to mention one thing I saw that surprised me a ton. I want to know what you think about this. Pittsburgh rushing, James Conner, 6 carries. Benny Snell Jr., 19. Yeah, just something we could talk about next time.
Yeah,
wow,
that's a little bit concerning.
That is very surprising.
I guess we might have a waiver wire edition.
Yeah,
might be
I'll say
Benny Snell to the
over
waiver
triple
wire.
the amount. That's insane.
Yeah, that's not great.
Anyways, yeah, go back to
We're gonna go back to the Cowboys. Rams. Everybody who likes football is happy about the outcome of this game. The Cowboys lost, which is, again, always a great thing. There it is. Final score of 20-17 Rams. This was one I think a lot of people were surprised by. I thought the Cowboys would look a lot better than they did. I was expecting them to win, but I thought the Rams were going to be very good. So it's kind of a weird mixed bag for me. I thought both, the Cowboys, I'm just worried that they're always going to be the best team to not go to the playoffs.
There's no excuse. Because with their personnel is better than the Rams.
It just makes no sense. Like, I don't know how they're so bad. But at least on my end for takeaways, we were very interested to see how the split went with CD, with Cooper, and with Gallup there. Cooper led the team with 10 receptions on 14 targets. That's obviously a lot of work, and that's something I was a little bit surprised about. I thought he was going to be the best guy, but given how him and Gallup functioned last year, I was expecting him to be a little closer. Gallup finished last in the targets amongst the 3.
Without that bogus penalty, though, that took away one of the targets, so he would have been tied with CD.
Yeah,
and he would have had the most yards. But just to put that in.
Okay, yeah, they would have. What if he had the most?
Yeah,
how deep was that shot?
I think it was 41 or 47. So he would have the most yards and the same amount of targets as CD.
But it is worth noting, though, that he still would have had 6 less receptions.
No, I agree.
Well, no. It just proves that everybody on that team essentially gets it done in different ways. Amari Cooper's the getting 1 million targets short guy, while Michael Gallup is clearly the long ball option, and that seems to be a pretty clear.
And CD looked nice, too.
Yeah, he definitely looked good. Again, Blake Jarwin did go down with a season-ending injury, which did suck, unfortunately. I was a little bit confused that Cooper Kupp only got 5 targets to Robert Woods' 8.
And I was significantly better than him.
Again, if you would have told me that Robert Woods had 6 receptions to Cooper Kupp's 4, I would have thought that Cooper Kupp he would have had more yards still.
Yeah.
But Robert Woods finished obviously way in ahead with 105 receiving yards. Next best guy, Higbee and Kupp were both tied with 40. So that was a little bit of a surprise for me. I was expecting Cooper Kupp to kind of come out and be the dominator there. But we'll have to wait another week to see if that happens. A couple last-second notes. Goff had 0 passing touchdowns, and Dak had 1. I thought that was extremely strange.
Yeah.
And something I don't expect to see a lot of for either team or just in the NFL going forward here. But just a little something to think about. And then Malcolm Brown led the Rams with 18 carries to Cam Akers' 14. And so Malcolm Brown obviously going to be on the waiver wire edition here momentarily. But that was a very big surprise as well.
Not only that, I watched the game, obviously, and Cam Akers and Brown. First off, Cam Akers didn't look nearly as good. So you might say, "Oh, well,
it was his first game."
I know. But you might say, "Oh, the box score." Like there's different situations. Malcolm Brown just looked better. He looked faster, quicker decisions, and was cutting better, hitting the holes better. And not only that, it was at the late game in the red zone and the crucial parts. They always had Brown in. Mm-hmm. It seemed like, oh, it's first down on the 30, we'll give it to Cam. But when they need, it seemed like Malcolm Brown was the guy they trusted a lot. And being somebody who, out of paranoia, I saw the report on the unofficial depth chart, Malcolm Brown is the number 1 guy. I'm like, oh, I'll just pick him up just in case. And I picked him up a couple days ago. I'm very, very happy I did because
definitely nice.
Because I own Cam Akers too, so I would have. If I didn't have Brown, I'd be very concerned as a Cam Akers. Now you're just going
to start the wrong one every week, and it'll be very
exciting. I know. But I know Malcolm Brown had a really good week 1 last year, too, and everyone got really excited, and they didn't do anything. But yeah, if I didn't have Malcolm Brown and I owned Cam Akers, I'd be very worried.
Yeah, it kind of depends where you got him. But, yeah, I agree that I think that could change as the weeks go on a little bit. But, yeah, definitely they both are going to have value moving
McVay
forward.
also said that he's planning on doing by committee unless somebody takes control. Mm-hmm. And last night, Malcolm Brown clearly took control. So, I mean, Cam could get hot as the season goes on. But right now, I think it's Malcolm's job to lose.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. Next, we will be going on to our last final segment here. This is going to be the waiver wire for this week. I'm going to start. Well, how about we go ahead? Do you have yours ranked by who you'd prefer the most, kind of moving down?
I just have a list of guys I like. My number 1 though would be Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, I had Malcolm Brown as my number 1 as well. Mm-hmm. I have a list of 8 guys, and then I just have a list of honorable mentions underneath that.
Just read yours then.
So my number 1 is Malcolm Brown. My number 2 is Nyheim Hines. I don't really think, again, we talked a lot about him at length. He had the 7 carries and 8 receptions, and obviously with Marlon Mack going down, that obviously opens up his ceiling quite a bit. And so I think he has a lot of room to potentially increase that and just be an asset every week for you.
I assume Benny Snell Jr. might be up in this echelon.
Yeah, we had not had a chance to update anything since any of the Monday night games. Benny Snell, I'm not sure. He would be ranked up high here as well. I'm not exactly sure, and I haven't seen his film or his stats, but I'm assuming he's going to be right around the 1 through 3 rank here.
It was 19 for 113 yards, by the way.
Did he score?
No.
Did he have any receiving?
He had 1 target.
Okay.
But he had 19 carries for 113 yards to James Conner's 6 for 9.
Yeah, I'm going to need to dig a little deeper into this one. It almost sounds like James Conner got hurt, but I have no idea. That we'll mention that at a later time, but I would assume that he's going to be in the 1 through 4 range. My number 3 right now is James Robinson on the Jaguars. Again, as mentioned, he had 16 carries, and the next best had 2. So, and that was, I believe Gardner Minshew and a receiver. So, I really like James Robinson. If he's not picked up, and I think that he has a lot of potential, he might be a guy that is pretty owned already because he was, I believe, the starter going in. My number 4 is going to be Dallas Goddard. He led the team with 9 targets. Also had a bigger day than Ertz. Didn't get the touchdown, but he was a lot more involved. We're not suggesting that this might be an every week thing, that he's the number 1 guy, but it'll happen enough like it does every year, and he just keeps getting better. So I think he's going to be a very nice tight end play. I'd spend a lot of fab on him, especially if your tight end is an situation. So a nice pickup potential there. My number 5 is going to be Adrian Peterson. Like we said, he had the 14 carries, 3 targets. The next best was 7 as far as carries go. And so I would expect him to continue what he's doing. And honestly, based on what we saw, I don't really expect any – I mean, he was there less than a week, and he's already putting up numbers. So I don't really expect him to get any worse, if that makes sense, unless he starts to really carry off, which, again, if you watch the film last year, he looked very good on film. So I'm expecting him to be very consistent. And if he was, I think he might even, depending on your team needs, if you're looking for less, risk, I would say he might even be higher up on the list. And then very quickly, I like Jerry McKinnon as the number 6. He had 5 targets, tied for the most on the team, got the receiving touchdown. And as a lot of other people have noted, you don't keep a guy on your roster and restructure him for 2 years to not use him. So I think his role is going to get bigger in this offense, and I think he's going to be a nice sleeper play and somebody who you're going to be glad that you added. Number 7, I have Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He had 6 targets, which was the second most on the team. He had the long bomb from Rodgers. He dropped a target, which could have been a nice gain. I think he has a lot of rapport with Rodgers, and I expect him to maybe not be a number 1 receiver, maybe even a number 2, but I think he's a good flex moving forward. Number 8, I have Scotty Miller from the Buccaneers. Again, he had 6 targets, tied for the second most on teams. Again, with the amount of receivers they have that are great, I don't expect that necessarily to continue, but another good flex play. And should someone get banged up or, kind of depending on the game script, I think he could also be definitely a playable asset to the team. So I'm just going to read through really quickly. I know I'm talking a lot, and I know I'll give you your shot in 2 seconds.
Okay, good.
I'm just going to run through the honorable mentions. At the running back position, first, I have Carlos Hyde as an honorable mention. These aren't in any order of who I'd take them in. These are just guys. Peyton Barber, honorable mention. I have John Kelly, who would probably be the highest on this list of guys that you'd want to add as an honorable mention. And then Myles Gaskin as well. For receivers, I have Traquan Smith and Willie Snead as the 2 other honorable mention guys. And then we have Logan Thomas as an honorable mention for tight end. And then if the Saints defense isn't owned, I think they're a good pickup.
Okay.
So I know I've essentially listed 2 rosters worth of.
No, you're good. I was gonna say, I like the list. One guy I would change on that. Mm-hmm. I'd move Adrian Peterson up to number 2.
Number 2?
I'd move him ahead of Nyheim Hines, just because with Nyheim Hines, he had the 8 catches, but he still had less production than Jonathan Taylor. So at this point with that, it's up in the air with both of them. Whereas with how poorly the other backs in Detroit played, I feel like this is Adrian Peterson's backfield. So we have a clear-cut guy versus 2 guys fighting for a job, if that makes sense. And I'd rather have the clear-cut guy.
My worry is that
because he looked good.
Is that AP, they're going to try to get the rookies in, and Carrion's still young, and he's coming off an injury.
Carrion just kind of sucks,
I think that they want to figure out what they have in that backfield, and I think a lot of this also depends on how competitive they are. If they found themselves to be 1-4, 1-5, I mean, just from a logical standpoint, what would be the purpose of playing Adrian Peterson? He doesn't, he
Jersey
might be
sales.
But I'm saying he might be the best guy you have, but is he helping? If he's not helping you win, you want to see what young talent you have.
I think they're going to be all right, though, because they should have beaten the Bears.
He played on the Washington football team quite a bit in a losing effort last year, but
yeah,
I definitely see the argument for it. I just think Nyheim Hines is, what you're getting essentially every week.
That's fair.
And Phillip Rivers does a million dump offs. And
That's
again,
fair.
I think we're arguing. I mean,
I like both.
These numbers are pretty interchangeable.
Yeah.
So it kind of just depends what you're feeling. Did we ever? I think you were looking it up. Did James Conner get hurt, or did he just have?
Okay, so I was looking it up on
night?
Twitter when you were reading off your list, and I don't know if he got hurt or what, but it's a bunch of people big mad.
Can I just tell you real quick? I just Googled James Conner, and it says James, and then these are news headlines.
Yeah.
The last 2 from NFL and NBC Sports were Steelers running back James Conner ankle questionable to return.
Because it's a bunch of people say, did James Conner get hurt? And then people like, wow, James Conner got benched. So it's like a 50-50. People say he got benched. Some people say he was hurt. So I wasn't sure.
It could be a situation as well where he was injured enough and they were winning. I don't know when this happened, or they felt confident enough in Benny Snell they're like, just take the rest of the night off.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the tweets.
It's hard without looking at anything or watching anything to know. But
yeah, there's a bunch of Mr. Rogers putting the clown mask on, and they're all inferring that's them drafting James Conner. So we have a bunch of unhappy people right now.
Yeah, I'd imagine. That's never good for the team. Did you just lastly here, since we're a little long, did you have you can feel free to either hate on my ranks or you can add guys.
Oh no, you talked about like all the guys I was going to talk about.
Did you told me, and I appreciated the Adrian Peterson. Mm-hmm. Did you have anybody else that you thought was ranked poorly? And I don't even mean ranked poorly, but just you would have put in different places.
No, you had what, Dallas Goddard at 5?
I think he might have been at of course, I accidentally closed the tab.
Because I really like Dallas Goddard.
I can tell you in 2 seconds we are recovering the tab.
I think it was 5.
So we had Dallas Goddard at terrible radio. We had him at sorry.
Dun dun dun.
Number 4.
I like him there. So yeah, I was gonna say he's 3 or 4 for me, just because.
So how would you rank the running backs?
Let's
operate that James Conner is. I guess I can answer this too. Let's just say he's questionable for next week.
Top 3, I'd say AP, Naheem, and then Benny Snell.
And we had Malcolm Brown as well, remember?
Oh, fine. Top 4, I put Malcolm Brown on top. I forget because I have him already.
And we have James Robinson too.
He'd probably be 5.
Which running back do you think has the most carries going forward from today on?
Touches or carries?
Well, same thing.
Well, I mean, rushes or just both?
Rushes.
Oh, rushes.
Rushing attempts.
Probably AP. No, or Malcolm Brown or AP. One
Even
of those
James Robinson. You think they? I know I'm asking you to guess.
I'm still sticking with AP and Malcolm Brown. It's tough because if Malcolm Brown can secure the job, he's going to have a ton of carries this season. That's just an if, though.
I'm going to guess James Robinson just because there's nobody else. It was a 16-2 split. No other running back you said touchdown.
Oh. So I got him confused with somebody else. Yeah. That's tough.
I mean, he only had 2 more carries than AP, so I'm not even.
Yeah, I know that.
It's just that there's at least you'd see a path where you'd be like, let's play Carry On instead, or let's play DeAndre.
Because I could see all 3 of them getting a bunch of carries.
Yeah, it seems like a lot clearer path for James Robinson.
I just said go for all 3 of them.
It also depends how hurt James Conner ends up being. But.
Yeah, and not only that, when he was in the game, I mean, it was only 6 carries, but he didn't do anything. And Benny Snell showed up and started doing stuff, so it could at least increase his workload a little more than what it was going to be.
It just sucks. James Conner is literally always hurt.
Oh, no, yeah. That's what everyone's commenting. They keep putting up the SpongeBob pic of the guy with the glass bones and paper skin, too, which
he is part of our all-injured team.
Yeah, so. First team all-injury.
All right. So that's going to wrap up. Did you have anything? I should say, did you have any last-second items you'd like to add before we?
Just the plug.
All right. Well, I was going to say that's wrapping up our podcast here. Week 1 NFL. Hopefully, we have 17 weeks of this. We shall see.
Hope so.
Brandon, would you like to tell the people where they can find us if they have not already found us?
Well, if you somehow haven't found us yet,
our links are in all the podcasts and videos and everything as well.
Podcasts. We have Spotify. We have Apple Podcasts, the 2 main places to go to. But you want to watch the videos and watch our beautiful faces, then feel free.
I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah, me neither. But if for some reason you did, go to youtube.com and Finish First Pod. That's Finish First Pod. And by Finish First Pod, I mean Suit Yourself Pod because I got mixed up there. It's Suit Yourself Pod, not Finish First. Suit Yourself Pod. If you want to find all of our stuff, our rankings, articles, all kinds of videos, go to our website, which is Finish First Media. That's where I got confused. FinishFirstMedia.com, first spelled First, not the one in the ST. And you'll find all kinds of content up there.
Well, perfect. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, concerns, feedback, please let us know. We'd love to hear them regardless of how angry or happy they are. And we'll be back, I believe, on Wednesday with a preview show for Week 2. As well as a breakdown for the 2 games that we weren't able to see tonight. So, everybody have a great whatever time of day it is, and we'll see you later.
Stay safe and wear a mask.